All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking real music in real time for a few real people out there just like you and just like me. Gonna start with a band from the UK, and I'm gonna end up talking about probably the most famous band from the UK ever. Here are the Big Wolf Band, and this is Live and Howlin'. Just go look up Big Wolf Band, and I'm thinking you're really gonna like the music. I discovered these guys a few years ago and been promoting their stuff ever since. If you live in the UK and you want to go see a great blues rock band, you can't do better than the Big Wolf Band. Also, you can't do better than Modern Retro Radio, Modern Retro FM, playing the new Beatles song now and then. I'm pretty sure they're playing it. If they haven't started playing it yet, they will be playing it. I mean, it's the Beatles, for crying out loud. And that's really the topic of this video here, is this new Beatles song. Everybody, all of the commentators on YouTube are weighing in on Now and Then. People were asking me about it, and I listened to it. And my first reaction was, holy crap, Batman, it's the Beatles, right? With John Lennon's voice. It's a very melancholy song. And sound. I was kind of merging two words together there. Paul McCartney over the summer said they were going to use some kind of AI to extract John's voice from this demo that they had. And this footage emerges of what was going on in 1995 behind the scenes. I was thinking to myself, imagine it's 95, right? And the music scene is headed into the toilet at that point. And the Beatles get back together again. Technically, I mean, the three Beatles get back together again. And you had George there. That was the most important part of this, because Paul and Ringo, they were always hanging out, but you had George. And they're working on this song. And I see footage of Jeff Lynne there, who I think would have been a more appropriate executive producer for this project, but that's just my humble opinion. I know Giles, everybody loves Giles. He's the son of George Martin. And okay, I agree. Giles is a great producer. And I think he tries to do his dad on steroids. And sometimes I think he overdoes. Whereas I think Jeff Lynne is far more organic. And he has a greater respect of the analog recording world, where I think Giles wants to push the outer limits of sound and do things that I think are going to take music in the wrong direction eventually. But that's, again, just my humble opinion on it. So McCartney said it was AI. Giles says, no, it's not AI. It's not artificial. It's not intelligent. He says, it's the same process that I used in Love, referring to the soundtrack to the Las Vegas Beatles show. Martin, who is the son of former Beatles producer George Martin, says McCartney was conflicted about this process, but he argued his case. My thought was this, that I really thought this needs to sound like the Beatles. The band would have probably sang Oz in those things, but they're not around anymore, so I'm not using AI to recreate their voices in any way. What he did was he took multi-track tapes of Eleanor Rigby, some stuff from Because, and Here, There, and Everywhere, just in the same way the Beatles are splicing that in. He adds, they feel like they're from the Beatles, and they are from the Beatles. I think if they were from some machine learning program, they wouldn't sound right. Okay. So essentially, you're taking bits and pieces from other songs, at least the vocal parts of it, which is good, because I was worried they were using like the current McCartney vocal underneath, which I think would have been a distraction. Paul is not the singer he once was. But again, you've got George's playing on there. Now, the solo on this, though, people are telling me it's McCartney doing the guitar solo, and I don't know all the details to this, but at the time, I'm thinking they scrapped this back in 1995. They had done a couple of tracks back in those days and put them on a compilation. And it was just, sort of an after the fact excitement that I had looking at all of these things that were happening in 95. Like, imagine if they had put out an album. Sorry to use the imagine word there. Without John, there can be no Beatles without John, but I always think to myself, what if like Julian wanted to step up and just be John, and just call it, Paul, George, Ringo, and Julian or something. I mean, it would have been a big deal. It would have definitely been a big deal. It would have been a boost at that moment too, because 1995, again, that started, to me, we were in the midst of the beginning of the fall of, when I say fall, I mean going downhill of the current music scene. And 30 years later, 28 years later, whatever, things aren't looking much better. So this song, do I like it? Obviously, it is a great song. It is an unfinished John Lennon composition, but it's mostly intact, as far as the theme of what it is. And it didn't take a lot of creativity to kind of flesh out a completed product. Obviously, Yoko had this and said, hey guys, would you like this cassette? And she just handed it over, and now we've got another Beatles song. And again, if you can extract the vocal without messing with the vocal itself, then this is good. It is really good. If you have to kind of sort of patch using a computer, in other words, it's kind of like when you rip something away and it tears something else in the process, then you have to kind of patch it with something else to kind of make it look like it was before. I'm not sure if that happens in this process, and the computer then learns to go back and fix, what you messed up by trying to separate the voice from the piano part. It seems like they did it seamlessly here. And if that's the kind of technology, then I'm okay with it. But as time rolls on, I'm worried that we're going to do more and more of this stuff where we say, what would the Beatles sound like if they, sang the Rolling Stones or something, And I don't know if that's a good idea. I mean, it might be interesting from sort of a shock value perspective, or just to generate your own views, likes, and clicks on your whatever website. Hey, what would the Beatles sound like if they played Supertramp, or vice versa? And I just, I would like to leave the good stuff alone. I would like to leave this stuff untouched, but based on human nature, right? We know what's going to happen. What's going to happen is things that weren't corrupted are going to become more and more corrupt over time. And, these original versions of songs too, which, you have the 2020 remix of Here Comes the Sun. Well, what was wrong with the original? Just remaster it, make sure it's clean. You've got the classic stereo separation of the time, which I love hearing. It feels analog. It feels warm. It feels real. Unlike what we're doing today, which is just synthetic. I think Keith Richards stated this recently, that the technology of today and all of this electronic garbage that they're putting out today is just nonsense. It's horrible. So a great song. I mean, it's a leftover Beatles track, falls off the table and hits the floor. You go scoop that sucker up. John Lennon, whoever. It's solo John Lennon material, basically. And John, during that 1979 period, it was a renaissance for him. He was writing much better. He had settled down as a human being. And then, of course, his life ends the next year. Who knows? These guys were back together in 95. It would have been a Beatles reunion at some point, which would have been mind-blowing just to think about if all four of them got together. All I know is if George can show up with Paul and Ringo in 95, I think that's the most important story here, is that George Harrison was there. And it makes me and everybody involved who loves the Beatles miss George even more, because he's like the unsung hero of that band. He needs to be elevated to McCartney-esque level, because he's that good. Same on the level with John. It should be all three of those guys. The fact that John and Paul were the alpha guys and they wrote the songs and they insisted that their songs were the best. Go listen to Here Comes the Sun. All right. It's got to be the best Beatles song to me. It just is. It just is. I hear that song and there's a magic about it that just is, I mean, that's how good it is, because all the other Beatles songs are great too. But Here Comes the Sun, While My Guitar Gently Weeps. Anyway, George Harrison, it's crazy to think he finally got in a room with those guys and said, okay, I'll do this. And it was for John. It was to try to get this song by John out to the public. And his efforts were worth it, because here we are in 2023 and we've got a new Beatles track. And you know what? Hopefully, folks, this is going to be the last Beatles song. I don't think it needs to keep going like this. I'm sure there are demos out there that you could, do something with, from even maybe when the Beatles were all together. We don't know. I'm sure all the Beatles nuts and fans know every single thing about songs that were started and then not finished. In this case with John, there's probably more. I would guess there's probably some other things lying around that could be utilized. But I'm hoping this will be the last thing. It just needs to end. But this is a fitting way for things to go out. All right. I've rambled on enough. I already told you about the Big Wolf Band, but I'm going to show this off again. This is Live in Howlin'. They've got some studio music out there, at least 2 albums that you can go listen to, studio albums that are really good. 2 or 3, I forget now. But just go on Spotify if you want to get a feel for what this band sounds like. And they are from the UK, like the Beatles. I'm not comparing them to the Beatles, but I'm just linking those 2 things together just because I can. All right, folks, I need your help over on Patreon. If you can help support the channel, pushing against the algorithm, still in the midst of, I like to call it the revenue apocalypse, because I don't know how else to describe it. Again, I want to thank the patrons who are doing just incredible things to help keep this channel going. If you'd like to be a part of that, $1 a month, or you can go over to YouTube and do a YouTube membership for, I believe, $2.99 a month, and that'll help as well. All right. Thanks again. God bless, and pray for peace in the Middle East.